Hello, hello, everybody. We are talking today with a legend, an icon, someone who has stayed the course, who has constantly reinvented himself, who continues to seek the beauty, the joy, the adventure in life. Someone to whom I look up to simply because he has continued to shine in spite of all of the vagaries of living. The multiple Emmy award winning and even more multiple Emmy nominated
That's
and
true.
others,
Yeah, there's
Joseph Rosendo.
there's a couple of them back there, Ernest.
They're shiny. I don't have one yet, but
You will for sure.
I
You will for sure. You
we'll
have some
see.
you have some nice awards. You got some Telly awards, I
I
think.
do. We
Yeah,
have Telly, we have Public Media Awards.
yeah.
None of those are any less, I guess, validating, if you will.
No, they're all validating. It's always
Yes,
great to be acknowledged it's great to be acknowledged by your family. They're the
sure.
last kind of sometimes to acknowledge you, but your friends and certainly your colleagues and your peers. That's always great.
Absolutely. And not to, make it bigger than it is. Awards are great and they are wonderful and we love receiving them, especially if they have a cash prize attached but
Well,
at the same time.
they're affirmation of your work, and that's nice. That's nice.
That's right. Exactly.
Because
And from your peers.
when you're an independent producer like you and I, you have to kind of keep your spirits up by yourself.
Many
And
times.
especially when you're in a medium where the viewers are over there on the other side of the television camera. And I did radio for many years, and they were on the radio, and you don't
That's right.
always hear from them. So you have to kind of keep yourself up, right?
Yes. Up and upright.
Up and up.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, so, and before we get into the state of the industry as we know it, let's just start off from the very beginning. You, like me, are a native Floridian.
Right. Born in Miami.
Yes. And
Okay.
so how go ahead, what were you going to say?
Of Cuban heritage. Yeah.
Aha, cubano en la casa.
Yeah, that's why I got my Cuban hat on tonight.
That's right. And so how do you think that foundation, coming from a place like Miami, coming from an immigrant background, and certainly kind of the multiculturalism as well as the nature of South Florida, the tropics, how do you think that influenced your desire to get out into the world?
Oh, well, growing up in Miami, it was interesting. Was the days when I grew up, Miami was a lesser international city than it is today, but it always had, of course, a very international flavor with the Cuban population that was there at that time, which was much smaller than it is today, and people from mostly South America and from the Caribbean, people of all colors, all nationalities, all religions. And I was fortunate enough that I grew up with a Cuban family. My father was born in Key West, but and my grandparents came directly from Cuba. So they were new immigrants. So they had that philosophy and they had the Cuban heritage. So I got a taste of that international flavor from my family. And then later in life, when I got older, I was able to see the value in it. I think that's the important thing for all of us, is to see the value. And we're talking at a time when people seem to be valuing our immigrant populations, but it's very, very important for us to value our immigrant heritage if we have it, and certainly that of others, because it makes our country, it makes ourselves richer. So just that interest in other people. I was from a very gregarious family. Cubans are notoriously outgoing and boisterous. I remember saying that I'd sit around my family for dinner or something, and the volume would keep getting higher and higher because you had to top the guy before, right? So it kept getting higher. Pretty soon you were yelling at each other. You might be saying, "I love you," but you were yelling at each other at the top of your voice because that was what was coming. So growing up in Florida did have that, back then in Miami, and Miami has a few more skyscrapers now, but when I grew up, it was really not like the cosmopolitan town it is today. So there wasn't that urban setting. I grew up in um, a poorer area of town, but still, it didn't matter. We had woods that we could play in and use our imagination. I had a park I could go to and practice my baseball and sports. So the combination of all of that cultural background and the openness of Florida. I mean, Florida is, like, flat as a pancake. You can't, until you get to a little bit above Central Florida, is there even a hill? I remember the first time I saw a hill in northern Florida, I thought, wow, it's a mountain. And my friends who were from Ohio and Tennessee, they thought that was the cutest thing in the world, that I thought these little bitty hills were mountains. But that gives you that sense of expansion, and it does give you a sense of wanting to to cover that space and to fill up that space and to explore that space. And then I was fortunate enough to go to Florida State University and then on to UCLA, and that really did open the doors for me at the world of travel. When back in the late 60s, 69 actually, I went to Europe for the first time with a group from UCLA, a theater group, and it opened my eyes up to the world. And talk about Florida, the expansion of Florida started it out. I drove once a year. We would go for one day. That was my father's vacation. One day we would drive down to Key West, where his parents were from, where he was from, and we'd go there. We'd meet his relatives. We'd go swimming in the ocean right there off the southernmost point in Key West, and then we'd get back in the car and drive home. And it was like crazy, but that was so important, that one day, to me. That travel experience really started me off where I was interested in that. And so, and you ride that the causeways or the bridge, and cover all the bridges and the highway going down to Key West, and just the openness of all that, the expansiveness of all that, and the freedom of all that kind of instilled in me the desire to get to know other places in the world.
Wow. Just number one, phenomenal storytelling, Joseph. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I am old enough to remember the tail end of that openness and expansiveness.
Right.
Being from Jacksonville, obviously not hillier, but certainly a slightly more elevated, the terrestrially and culturally quite southern.
Yes, very southern.
That said, I do remember just the only time you would peek above the tree line might have been on a bridge
Yes.
or, on the highway that might have been elevated. And it was just trees, and you would see some little mid-rise, maybe concrete building poke up above that, phone towers, and occasionally a landfill. And that's what I remember. It's like,
That was the mountain.
yes.
Yeah. Well, you got a little bit more of it up there in Jacksonville than I had in Miami,
Sure.
But so you were kind of used to the altitude,
The nosebleed section of the state.
You're up in the nosebleed area up in Jacksonville. Wow.
That's right. But I also went to Florida A&M, so both of us educated in Tallahassee, the state capital.
Right? Yeah.
Yes, with the seven hills that they said were the highest.
I was in theater at that time too. I was, studying to be I didn't know it, but I was studying to be an actor, and we often did plays where theater folks from A&M would come over and be in our plays. I did Edward Albee's Bessie, about Bessie Smith. The play he has, a short play he has about Bessie Smith, and I cast actors from Florida A&M, because at that time there was not many African Americans that were going to Florida State University.
Yes.
And that was I'm talking about back in the late 60s. And even though Miami was fairly racially integrated by that time. It still wasn't, of course. And certainly when you got above Orlando, things became very clear that you were more in the South than you were in Miami. So I really didn't have any African Americans that I could cast from Florida State's group of students. I went to Florida A&M, and that was a wonderful experience. Met some fabulous people.
Well, I think you just kind of touched on the fact that none of this is ancient history.
No.
And the surge against the collectivity, the communal aspect of just being together in this country. I think that is something that is unfortunate, that the experiment of being together barely got off the ground, after a few decades. But
right.
Hey, that doesn't mean that we can't continue to do our job, which is to connect with people, no matter the background, no matter the boundary, which is why we're in this space.
Yeah, I don't mind telling you that one of most of the disheartening things that have happened in the last 5 years was when our present president, in his earlier manifestation as president, called countries, pardon the expression, but that was his expression, called countries around the world shithole countries. I was terribly disappointed in that, and because I've never been to any of those countries you're talking about. I've never been in a country that could be described like that, because the people in the country are people who make the country.
That's right.
And I've never found those kind of people anywhere.
100%.
That, I think, has been I think you and I both attempt to convey to our viewers is what a wonderful educational and psychologically uplifting experience it is to travel, and
Yes.
how life-changing it is, and how you should travel so that when you bring back from those experiences, you're bringing back more than a statue like my African statue behind me, but you're bringing back what you've learned from the people. And certainly these days we can talk a lot about resilience. We can talk about keeping on, and perseverance in many cultures. And it's quite clear when you travel around the world how really resilient human beings are, and how they'll make happiness out of something. Back when I was a kid, we were poor enough that we made toys out of. We didn't have a lot of toys or games. We played video games and stuff. There were no video games, hardly television actually, and so we had to create our own worlds, and that's something I'm really sorry to see some of the children of American children have lost, is their imagination. That because so much has been given to us in visually and in so many ways, and when you don't have it, you create it, and that's the power of being a human being. That's something I don't think AI will ever steal from us, is our creativity, our intuition, our humanity. And traveling, as you know, just emphasizes all of that, and heightens our understanding of that truth.
Absolutely. There's nothing else that I can say to follow that. Just because, I firmly
I want to do
believe
your
it.
job for you.
I'm just listening.
I'm going to answer all your questions today. That's why I, that idea was capsulated for me years ago when I did a radio show for 20 years before doing television. And I read the quote from Mark Twain: "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness." And that struck a chord to me 1,000 radio shows ago and 151 television PBS episodes ago. And I've used that to close every show since. And that, funny enough, or maybe not funny enough, hopefully enough, that's the one thing that I get response the most about from my viewers and my listeners before and my viewers now. What's that quote? There was some, that quote. What was it again? Can you please, I get emails from them and phone calls from them asking me, what's that quote again? Travel is fatal to what? There's another part to that quote too, when Mark Twain says, and this is something that is sorely needed by those of us in our country right now. You don't get an empathic, open-hearted view of the world by staying in your little bitty corner of it. That's the rest of that quote from Innocents Abroad. That when he traveled around the Middle East and in Europe on a steamer years ago and writing for his newspaper back home. So that quote really says it to me, and I think it says it to my viewers too, or they wouldn't call up and say, "Ah, I love your quote, man. I love Mark Twain's quote." I said, "Yeah, that says it." You're talking to the right people when somebody picks that up.
That's right. And I think, I'd like for you to speak a little bit on how you think it applies today. And the reason I say that is because when Mark Twain wrote that, travel, like life, was a bit more face to face. It was a bit grittier. It was a bit dirtier. You had to engage with people. You could not just research everything on the internet and text someone. Now back then you really had to have FaceTime, which of course then helps with the breaking down of those barriers. But when you see people who have collected experiences, staying in the finest hotels and resorts, they've gone places, but have they interacted? Have they engaged with people in a way that would break down those barriers of prejudice and of bigotry? How do you think that particular phrase and that concept and idea can be effective in today?
Yeah, I have a lot to say on that, actually, Ernest. So thank you.
Away.
Now you can relax now for a while. To begin with, used to be, I take my generation, I get to have, my generation gets to take credit for opening up the travel mind. Americans, particularly Americans, prior to the generation of the 60s and, in the 70s, people traveled, they had to have money to travel, one, and then they traveled isolated from their environment. It truly was that if it's Tuesday, it must be Belgian kind of experience. They would travel, they'd buy a package, they'd all be in the same bus or whatever, transportation together, and they'd go and have these experiences with other Americans. And everybody else was looked at as an object. And let's look at the Eiffel Tower. Let's check that off. Oh, we saw the Arc de Triomphe. Let's check that off. Oh, the Colosseum. Let's check that off. And it was all about checking off all the highlights and coming home and saying, gosh, I was in Rome and I saw the Vatican. And, and that was it was about. Then our generation of young folks decided, we want that experience, but we can't afford it. So what we're going to do, we're going to backpack. We're going to stay in hostels. We're going to travel in groups, or we're going to travel individually. We're going to hitchhike, and you could back then. And that opened up that the travelers today, my PBS audience and your PBS audience, the majority of them are over 45. Hopefully we can get some younger folks your age coming up.
I'm over 45.
We have to face the fact that most of them are, the demographics say over 40 at least, or 45, and mostly women are viewers on PBS. And that group of people, my generation of people, if you want to limit generations, I hate to do that too, because I don't think you need to limit yourself. That's my generation. I'm the generation to save the world. I'm the but there's just something to be said. Those are the people that had the guts to go out and travel on their own, and that opened up opened up, first of all, some of the experiences that people never had before, the one-on-one experiences you're talking about, because that's what we were looking for. Yes. And that's what we could afford, staying in somebody's house, staying in a little small they didn't have B&Bs and Airbnbs back then. A little small hotel where you had to buy dinner or you couldn't stay at the hotel. That's the way it was in France back then. And what that did, that opened up so that when that group of people started to have money to go on a river cruise or go on a tour, they started demanding from these tour companies trips that included personal experiences that gave them time to discover one, but also gave them trips that gave them authentic. That's the new buzzword, right? Authentic experiences, and that means experiences with people. Now,
Yes.
I know you and I both always recommend to our viewers, put yourself in a situation where you can have those experiences. You know, try to not look for the places that are going to isolate you from the populace, if you will. Like there are places in the world that you can travel to, and you got a nice hotel, you got your pool and your beach out front, and you could be anywhere. You could be in LA, and you've traveled halfway around the world to have this experience.
Yes.
You know,
and we love nice hotels.
Nice
We
hotel.
do, but we
I
love them.
Nice hotel. Oh no,
Yes.
don't worry. I never was the guy who wanted to do the show about eating bizarre foods. I wanted to eat the best food.
Yes.
I want to
But
do
we want to be
with the
Go ahead,
Michelin
sorry.
star restaurants. You know, that's the one
Yeah.
I want to go to. The best wine. That's the experience I want. There's another Birnbaum, which was passed away, but a famous travel writer. He said the only thing better than traveling is if you were rich is no. The only thing better than being rich is traveling as if you were. And as
Yes.
journalists, we often have the opportunity to do that. And
That's
because
right.
people want to open up their doorsteps and show us their luxury thing. But if you don't get out of that door
That's right.
and go out there and meet the people and have those experiences, you're not doing your job as a travel journalist. You may be doing your job as an actor, but you're not doing your job as a travel journalist. And that's, fortunately, I was lucky enough to start that. My first story, the first travel story I ever made any money off of was for the Los Angeles Times, a short piece. And I wrote for newspapers and magazines for 5 years when you could still do that and make $50 on a story. I finally decided I couldn't write fast enough to make any money, so I started a radio show. But there are that's why when I do presentations around the country, which I do for travel shows and the like, I normally highlight 5 destinations, and they're all destinations where you know you're in a foreign country when you're there. You can't walk. I stayed in the Taj Hotel in Delhi, one of the most beautiful hotels in the world. The minute you walk outside that door, India grabs you by the throat and thrashes you around and says, no, you're in India. And in 3 blocks, you'll have 33 things happen to you that have never happened to you before in your life. You'll smell, see, hear, feel, that's the experience you want. So that's why when I do presentations, I have a certain destinations I highlight, because the theme of my presentation is travel is a life-changing experience. You don't have a life change. You might have a nice experience going down to Cabo and staying in a hotel in Cabo and going out and laying on the beach and partying at the places down in Los Cabos and at the end of the peninsula and swimming in the nice warm water. You can have a wonderful experience, fabulous experience. But is it a life-changing experience?
That's right.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably you're not going to come back and say, wow, I'm a completely different person. You go to Bolivia and you land at 14.5 feet. We're talking about elevation in La Paz. And then you go down to Lake Titicaca and you climb one of those extinct volcanoes and you're now at 15.5. Your whole body has changed. Your blood, your heart is saying, what the hell? Where's the oxygen? It's producing a whole new blood cells. You come off of that mountain and you're a different person. You are literally a different person. And those are the experiences that I want. I know those are the experiences you send your viewers through. I watch your shows and I see all the great interactions you have with people where you're in there cooking with them and doing things and enjoying what they're doing, participating in their experience. I like particularly some of your dance sequences. You're a much better dancer than I.
Well,
And
listen,
these days, I'm a great dancer. Don't get me wrong, but you're even better. And you have the rhythm. You have the rhythm. Those of us, there are those of us who have been blessed, and I certainly want to. So yeah, so
thank
I
you.
really appreciate watching. Anybody who is not traveling like that is wasting their money, is my opinion.
Hmm. No, I thank you so much for highlighting that. Honestly, I have to have human engagement in life. There are moments when I definitely hermit, when I need solitude, when I'm going within and just to kind of fill up my own cup.
Yep.
But if I'm not engaging with people in a way that's fulfilling for all of us, that's enjoyable, that's life affirming, with great laughter, with dance and joy and music and food and new experiences and just love, then honestly, what am I doing here?
Sure.
And again, I love a great, I love a comfortable, nice hotel. I love a good beach. I do love all of those things, but
Yeah, me
those
too.
are not things that have been life affirming to me. Those are things that have just kind of come along with the territory. And
Right.
certainly, I didn't start out that way. I started out, I wouldn't say backpacking necessarily. I was the type that would pay €25 a night for a 2-star hotel with a shared bathroom, and I would take a container of Clorox wipes.
Yeah,
So I wasn't necessarily a hostile person, which is great. I know people enjoy that.
that's exactly the way I used to travel when I was first started. In the '60s and the '70s, and early on, I didn't have the wherewithal to buy a 5-star hotel, and
Sure.
I was but I could buy a small hotel and have those individual experiences. I never stayed in hostels as much as I am
Advocate
envious
for them.
in a way of people who did have that experience and also need. And I think that's I need to reinforce people who will do that. People who walk the trail to Santiago de Compostela, the way is the call, and
Yes, the
there are
Camino.
hotels along the way where you sleep with other pilgrims. I mean, that's an interesting experience to me, and I've always wanted to do part of it anyway. It's like 800 miles long, but no, I've liked a little bit of comfort, and
And
even if
privacy.
a little bit of comfort was just a bathroom down the hall and a nice single bed or a bed big enough to be in, and great. And what's always been constant, no matter what. There are certain places in the world, what's always been constant is you can get great food at any cost, at
Oh,
wherever in your
absolutely.
budget. You can
Yes.
get amazing food. You can eat at a Michelin star restaurant. Yes, that's true. And you get the height of that cuisine. But, in France, you can go to a small restaurant and have an amazing meal.
Yes.
It's cheaper years before, but you can still do that. You can do that in Bolivia. You can do that in places that are still offering the traveler a reasonably priced experience. And I did a social media piece recently where I addressed the fact that I read that Americans, because of the the atmosphere that has enveloped our country, are scared to death to spend money and don't feel like they can spend money on their normal vacation. So
Mm.
they're not traveling. And my answer to that is okay, if you don't feel your budget, you're scared that your budget won't stand a trip to Europe. Well, then go to Bolivia where it's very, very inexpensive. Go to Latin America, go down to South America and find some of the countries there where your dollar still goes a long way and have that experience. Don't not travel because you don't have money. You can figure out a way to have an experience that'll fit your budget.
Hmm.
So
No,
that's
absolutely.
that's kind of my advice to people. They just need to look a little harder, you know?
And you know what? I believe that the right deals, the right opportunities will show up when you're open to them.
Exactly.
There's been, I think, over the years, that we've traveled. Obviously, things have changed. The economies have changed, but also technology has allowed us to do things that we would not have been able to do before, like homestays that were easier to access.
Right.
before you had to go possibly through an organization. I went through Youth for Understanding, which was kind of an international exchange organization. There were some earlier organizations that were there to help people find information about where you could stay and exchange with people culturally. Nowadays, there was couch surfing that came along in the early 2000s. It was very big in
Yes, it
helping
was.
me access the world in a way that was comfortable for me. And I say that not to say I didn't get out of my comfort zone, but comfortable for me to have a place where I felt safe, but also where I felt connected. And I think going back to the whole point of like, yeah, I might have paid $25 a night or euro to have a bit of privacy, but it allowed me to use that as a launch pad to go out into the world. And I say the world, but really I mean the streets of Pigalle in Paris, where I was, gallivanting around, connecting with people, including some romantic connections that I would then have back at my place. And just all
Wow,
of the ways that we
that's
live.
telling us something. That's revealing some things there, Ernest.
Well, I am no prude and no angel because I am very much a Scorpio. Just because my show is on PBS,
Yeah,
it's
well,
not PBS After Dark.
you've been luckier than me in those experiences, but that's good. That's great. See,
Oh, well, Joe,
I
yeah,
always took my companion with me or always traveled because I felt
lovely.
that was, especially if you had a new girlfriend, it was a great way to find out whether they were going to meet the mark or not,
Yes, yes,
Because if
yes.
we couldn't travel together, then I certainly didn't want to go any further than that travel experience. So it's kind of a test. So I always, I normally, all the long travel experience I had, I always had a companion with me. So I didn't
Well,
have
and that's
these.
a lovely thing.
Yeah, it
I
was lovely.
wanted that.
It was like, it was nice to share somebody with because there's sometimes when you're traveling alone. I've done that too, particularly for work. And you're in this amazing thing. Once I was in Positano, Italy, and I had a fabulous hotel that they were showing us. I was traveling on a press trip, a fact finding trip for Positano, and I was sitting in my bed and just the open window. You looked out and there was the water was right there in front of me, and oh my gosh. And I even wrote a story about it. I said, I'm in this room and it's so romantic and beautiful. And I'm alone.
Ah,
So it was like, so I've had those painful moments where you go, oh, this place is too nice for me to stay in by myself. I gotta get out of
ah,
here. I've had that happen too. So,
sure,
but
sure.
so it's nice when you're in a place like that to share it with someone.
Oh,
And that's
absolutely.
the joy of traveling with someone, or meeting somebody that you travel with for a short period of time. And that was kind of one way that people meet each other and come together. So
Sure.
yeah,
And I've had all of those different types of experiences traveling with a significant other, being solo and enjoying it, being solo and feeling heartbroken. And also having lovely, I don't want to call them flings, but I would, affaire d'amour. My French sucks.
there you go.
But
Great, good,
which for me has been part of the romance of travel
of
because part
course,
of connecting with people
of
is
course,
doing so in all of the different ways. And I've
of
been,
course, absolutely.
obviously blessed to have created phenomenal friendships, phenomenal romantic relationships, business partnerships, and all sorts of connections throughout my life of travel. And that is the kind of driving energy of my television series. And of course, yours includes that, and just being out in the world as a lover of it, as a lover of the world, as a lover of life, Joe. And so, let me ask you then, because obviously we could go for hours and hours and hours,
Hours,
but
hours, hours.
we'll do just some highlights. What then keeps you going after you've had your radio show, you've had multiple series now? What do you still find to be to attract that attracts you out into the world?
Well, I think it's for early on, I got driven by the fact that the experiences we create in our lives, the gift that we've been given is this life, and
Yes.
we have all each of us have a potential that has been given to us, and it's our job to fulfill that potential. Now, finding out what that is exactly takes some time. Took me some time for sure, and so that kind of gets you started down the path of seeking different things to help fill that potential. And I right early on I discovered that experiences is what it was all about. Was having
Yes.
as many experiences as you have. There used to be a bumper sticker that obviously very obnoxious people put on their cars where they said the guy with the most toys wins. And I hated that bumper sticker. It was always on a car that I kind of hated anyway, or envied probably too. But no, the guy who has the most experience wins. At the end of your life, you don't sit there and say, "Gee, I wish I worked more." What you say is, "I wish I had." If anything, if you have to make any wishes, you're wishing that you'd had more experiences happen to you. And
Yes.
I think as you get older, you just start since the goal is to have as many experiences as you can, you start to have variations on those experiences. That's the new thing. You're around long enough that you get to have that experience, but now there's a variation on it. And that's what keeps things exciting. That's what keeps you wanting to get up in the morning and sit down and do the work. And your viewers should understand that what we do is a lot of work. And if
Yes.
you didn't love it, you wouldn't do it. And if it was easy, everybody would do it. The reason they don't is because it takes a lot to put a show on like yours, and to, in our case, find the independent funding to support it. And people should know that independent producers like you and I never received a dime of their public money, and
Right.
it was never funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. The stations that we air on, of course, were in part, and anything to hurt them hurts the distribution of the messages that you and I and those like us want to get out there to them. We don't get to deliver our gifts, and we don't get to deliver our message without those stations out there being supported. So everybody needs to support our public television and public Create TV, public television, and PBS. They need to spend that $10 a month to get passports so they can watch every one of your shows and every one of my shows on demand. I mean, this is like truly a no-brainer. And if you care about either of our shows, you need to support PBS, your PBS station, and open the world of PBS up to you. Because, if you don't do that, you get to see one of my shows and the rest of you can't even get to, unless they happen to pop up on your TV someday. So
that's right.
That's, I think, is that's what keeps driving me, is the desire to create new experiences, and the realization that you never know when you're going to have to begin again. So you need to be prepared to begin again. And what keeps you beginning again and again and again, you're right. I was a writer, then I had a radio show, and then I had the Travelscope television show, which I did with my partner at that time, my ex-wife now. And then when that circumstances meant I had to create a new show and a new company, I did. It wasn't easy, but there was no other alternative. And I think you and I have created a life where there really aren't other alternatives for us. We say, if I'm not doing this, I don't want to do anything. There wasn't like, oh, I could do this, or I could get a job in a company. No, it was never like that for us. It was always, no, I've got to do this, and I'll do whatever it takes to do it. And I'm sure you have done whatever it took, and I certainly have done whatever it took. In the early days, I'd get up here in LA on the West Coast, and I was writing for newspapers on the East Coast, and I'd start at the morning at 5 o'clock in the morning. It was 8 there, calling newspapers and pitching stories so that I could create a body of work that would allow me to have the life I have been fortunate enough to be given. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Oh, not only was it a full and complete answer, it was incredibly inspirational to me.
Well,
You know, it's I hesitate to refer to you as an elder in this space, but I believe it just is
I am.
reflective of your experience. You know what I mean? It's not about age per se. It's just you've done it and you continue to do it, and you understand the risks and the pitfalls and the challenges, but you also know the peaks and the benefit and the enjoyment and fulfillment that comes from it.
Well, thank
And
you.
so,
And
yes,
And thank you for the opportunity, because one thing that does happen as you get older is you do have, if you're fortunate enough to live your life in a certain way, a wealth of knowledge, and everybody has it.
yes,
You know, they know how to whittle a stick, or they know how to cook a turkey dinner. Everybody has that knowledge that you gained as you get older. That's the blessing of being older. And then you want to deliver that knowledge in some way. And some people are very good at, you know, we've had the opportunity to deliver it in our shows,
yes,
and in and that's our, you know, when I say deliver your gifts, that's what I'm talking about. You know, one of the people I really admire, Wayne Dyer, from who did a lot of shows on PBS, as a matter of fact, a motivational speaker and a very spiritual man. He said, "Don't die without singing your song.
mm,
Don't die without singing your song." And that's, I think, good advice. And it's what's motivated you is we have a drive that we're going to deliver our gifts one way or another, and we'll deal with a lot of obstacles. There are going to maybe be a lot of obstacles to overcome, and a lot of people that would say, "No, why would you ever do something like that?"
yes,
You know, and we say, "Well, this because we're not going to die without singing our song or delivering our gifts." Because you don't want to be that guy on his deathbed who says, "Wow, was my life really just a waste?" You know, one of those
yes,
horrible, scary moments is to say, "No, I just wasted my life." You don't want that. And people, we help people not do that. We say we are way showers because we're showing them, you know, of whatever age. Now you have a nice scope of age range between you and I. We say to them, you know, you can have a life worth living. You can create something, and everybody's budget will allow it, and you
mm,
just have to travel in a certain way with a certain understanding. And there's so much these days. I mean, you know, I go on YouTube to listen to Wayne Dyer or to Ram Dass, you know, people who I follow because of their spirituality and their meditation that they lead me through and stuff. And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them,
yes,
and they're all on your phone. You can get in touch with, you can get guidance on your phone now for nothing. Back in the day, you had to go to India and go to an ashram and have a guru and to have those kinds of experience. Not anymore. You can sit in your living room and have a guru of your own teach you and help you and enlighten you. And you and I think I'm prepared to say that you and I are gurus. We're gurus of travel, and we're gurus of life, because you know, you at a young age have decided this is what you're going to, at least for now, this is what how you're going to deliver your gifts. You might find other ways to doing it later, uh, and um, and we've got a mission. We've got a mission, and I'm a child of the cities of the 60s, and I certainly believe that what we do affects the world, and we can change the world through our individual energies. And I certainly believe that. I bought into it back then, and I've never given it up. No matter how many people have poo-pooed the 60s and said it died, brother, it never died. Because those of us who believed in it keep it alive.
all I can say is that was very, uh, that was impactful, powerful, and certainly touching for me
Great.
because the validation and understing. what is sometimes given up in order to live into that truth and knowing that the world can and should be a better place for us all. And that we are not only are we the heroes that we need, but we're also that one drop in the ocean, which is made of drops. And so again, thank you for that. I think when we look at just everything, we're doing, I often liken life to surfing. But for those who haven't surfed, or for those who prefer cooking, I think that's another way of looking at it. With surfing, there's a lot of schlepping involved. There's a lot of you got that board that you're trying to take out there, and then you have to wait for the perfect wave, and you're doing a lot of water treading, and there's a lot of energy expenditure for 30 seconds of bliss, and then you're willing to do it all again. With cooking, especially a great meal, you have to go to get the groceries. You have to get the perfect items and ingredients. You bring it all together. You got things on the front burner, the back burner, and the oven, and all this commotion going on for something that would be consumed in maybe 20 minutes.
Right.
But you do it because that bliss is worth all of it. And so, that for me is life affirming to understand that, and to see you as a way shower, a guide, and a friend. That for me is that makes this an honor, a privilege, a pleasure. So again, thank you so much for who and how you are.
I'm not a surfer. I try to get up. I can't. I'm a surfer who's never stood up on a board, but I for long. But
well,
I am a fisherman, and and that's why they call it fishing and don't necessarily call it catching, because you spend a lot of time fishing to have that one moment where you have maybe a minute or so of excitement when you catch a fish. But it's a lot of fishing, a lot of faith in that fishing, and it's many casts out in order to get that fish. So it's the same thinking that you're talking about with surfing. I never thought of that before, but that's a great analogy. I'll use that, Ernest.
Well, please. And what actually made me think of it that way wasn't because of my success on the board. It was because of the amount of times I fell, the amount of water I swallowed. But you can't fall if you hadn't stood up. So it was the fact that I had been able to pop up more than once, even if I fell to the back, to the side. I don't think I've ever been upright on a board for longer than about 5 seconds.
Me too.
But that was, I touched the hand of God.
Fishing is like that too. I mean, when you catch a fish, you go, "Wow, God has to be involved in that." There's that wonderful scene in the Godfather before he gets killed, where the brother goes out and takes, wants to take his nephew out, and of course they don't let him go because they're about to murder him. And he says, every time he goes out, he says a Hail Mary. Holy Mary, Mother of God, the Lord is with thee. And that's what he's saying when they kill him. That's the beautiful dramatic movement in the Godfather 2. But that's kind of what it's like for fishing, really. I mean, I really understood that, because when you're sitting there, you're connected to that big, dark, empty, not empty, but full ocean that you can't see what's going on down there.
That's right.
You've got this little line out in the water, and you're saying, come on, deliver. And that's what it takes. You learn patience like you do on your board.
No, as someone who never enjoyed fishing because of that very, what I would consider to be the precious resource of patience that I had coming down here to this planet. Meaning, it's not that I didn't have patience. It's just that I had very little, which made, I had to meet it out bit by bit. That I say only to say I have learned across the board that it is that patience is just the knowing that it's all working out. Right. How can our wonderful audience find out more about you or be in touch with you?
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. JosephRosendo.com is the website that connects to Joseph Rosendo Steppin' Out, the series that's in its third season, and also connects to Travelscope.net, and all of my Travelscope shows, 135 shows I did on Travelscope and 12 seasons there. So they can learn information very easily by going to josephrosendo.com. That's the conduit. That's the pathway to everything. And we have the e-magazines. We have all of our episodes have their own page, so people can just go to the website, learn a lot about Travelscope, and they can also read about the background story about creating those trips, and of course social media too. We are on all of them: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, everybody. And my producer is pointing to something. What is it? Oh, and of course, PBS Passport. Go to PBS Passport.
Yes.
Pay that $10 that I told. That's a contribution to your public television station that you do once a month. And that opens up all of my 151 shows to you on demand. Wow, look at that. It's pretty cool. That's how.
That's right. Support public television, public media, PBS, NPR, your local station, and of course, independent producers like Joseph Rosendo. Muchísimas gracias, señor. It was an honor. Again, privilege and pleasure. Thank you for who you and how you are.
Hasta luego. Gracias.
Hey,
Talk to you later, Ernest. All right.
Bye.